One of the most powerful and frankly one of the most confusing aspects of test delivery can be something delivered in a workflow. Whereas a normal process is you send a candidate an email, they take an assessment, the administrator gets the results. A workflow is something that's a repeatable process that has many steps. So we allow you within the system to create your own workflows that might have many processes that are very repeatable. So I can build a workflow from scratch, or I can take an existing one and slightly change it from what that one looks like. But we'll build one from scratch and we'll call this random activities. I apologize for misspellings. I probably won't correct them for purposes of making this easy to understand. I'll click create workflow. And what I'm doing is I'm going to use a what you see is what you get editor to build out this repeatable process. I can put content on the screen. I can create completion windows or days from assignment that this has to be done. But just for the sake of illustration, we'll make it as simple as possible. What you do is you take the left-hand activities, anything from asking someone to upload a document, to taking an assessment, to paying for a scheduled proctored session, to simple email activities. I'll start by this process is going to email the candidate an invitation to take a test. And we will copy this, and it's something that you can put descriptions on here if it's easier to do or it helps you remember. This token thing is, who do you want this email to go to? We want it to go to the tester's email. Do you want anybody copied on it, CC'd on it? What's the from address? We want it to come from the administrator, and we'll call the body or the subject invitation. And then once again, you can use this token to say, I want the tester's full name to start my message. And then I can do something really simple. Please click below to get started. This is where you'd put all of the information about your program, all the personalized details about what you're trying to accomplish. We'll put the URL to launch the workflow. You can add other information, but we'll just make this simple. And we've created our own email as part of this workflow. I'm going to follow this up by a hurdled assessment. So you can click on this button here and that'll search the entire catalog. But let's say I want to find the work personality test. I'm going to pick that test and I'm going to call this test 1. And this is the first test in my hurdled workflow so that I as an administrator don't have to go look at results. I just let the system take care of it. If this candidate does pretty well on this test, I'm going to move them on. So I have an invitation to test, and I have test 1, and then I'm going to put a second assessment in here, and we'll call this, I'm super creative, I'll call it test 2, and then we'll pick another test, and I just happen to know we have a test called demonstration, and that's going to be a fairly simple test. So the system is querying for that demonstration test, and I'll just leave all this blank, but there are lots of other options for validity and things like that. So I have 2 tests, and then I'm going to have a fail email and a pass email. So I'll go back in here and say, you would not do this to a candidate most likely, but I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to send you this email and it's going to say you failed. So we'll send this to the tester. We'll copy the administrator. The subject is sorry, and the text in the body of this email is you did not pass this test. Don't call us, we'll call you, kind of thing. So we have an activity, we'll call that fail email, and then I'll create another activity called pass email. So I'm just creating activities. I would like this to be part of a workflow that we're going to assemble, and it's a lot like Visio, where you just drag information around on screen, and it generates useful or conditional logic to move it through that. So I'm going to say, great, and then I'm going to say, you passed. We will call you. So very simple concept, and I'm not meaning to minimize what can be done, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on formatting. The great intelligent part of the system is its ability to configure, kind of like I mentioned Visio. After I invite them to test, I want the first step for them to be to take that first test. So we'll call this invitation sent. So the invitation was sent. There are no conditions. There's a condition editor here. I'm not going to do anything with that because everyone that gets sent the invitation, I want them to take test one. No conditions. Right now, our workflow is ending on test one, so we have to say what happens next. Well, I'm going to say if they do well on this test, I'm going to pass them. So this is where I can set up a pass condition. And this might seem like a lot of text entry, but here's where it gets smart. Is I can say on that work personalities test, and this is probably an unrealistic example, for the energy raw score, I'm going to say for the energy raw score, if they get greater than 0, which I configured up here, I'm going to pass them. So that's my pass condition, and I finish. You can see it right there. That's the condition. We have to remember energy raw score greater than 0, they pass. Well, we'll also need a fail condition to this. So I'll drag it up here to this fail email. And we'll call this fail. And we'll put in the fail condition, which is a lot like the pass. We'll say, I think it was energy raw score. And we'll say if it was greater than 0, they pass. We'll say less than or equal to 0, they fail. And we'll finish that. And we've set up a pass and fail condition to that first test. The great thing about continuing this process is if they pass, we could say, you know what, I don't want to send them that email yet. I want them to move to the next step. So I'll just kill this little rule that I set up and say, no, I actually want to go here if they pass. So we'll call this the pass condition. So kind of a way showing you a little bit about editing and a little bit about how you can change your mind as you go. So we'll put this energy raw score, finish that, and I'm sorry, we need to define if it's greater than 0, we want to pass them. We'll click finish. So now they've passed that test. If they fail, they get the email. And we can do the exact same thing on the bottom here. We could say if they don't do well on test 2, I want to send them this fail email again. So once again, set up that fail condition. And I can say if they get less than 0, let's pick a different aspect of this. So demonstration raw score. If they get less than 0, we'll say that they fail, which is what we wanted to do there. So we now have a fail condition. And if they get greater than 0, we'll pass them. So the raw score greater than 0, we're going to pass them. So we set up a pass condition here. So we have set up something that could save an administrator a ton of time. I have to go look at the test 1 results, and if they fail, I have to send them an email. If they have passed, I have to assign them another email, and so on and so on. So this simple workflow would save them a bunch of time. We can click on the top right-hand corner here to validate, and it'll say, you've set this up just great. We can save it. Call it random activities, it's saved. We can preview it, put in some information and say if I got this score, what's going to happen, and it'll walk us through that process. So it's pretty handy about saying pick an activity on the left. So for test 1, if I get a score of 2, let's see what's going to happen there. On the second test, if I get a raw score of 3, what's going to happen? And we can always run these activities and it'll tell us how'd you do? And it says invitation to test. It was sent. They passed test 1. They passed test 2. And we sent them that satisfied email. So that's a great way to preview your work. And you can also publish this. And when I publish it, I can activate it. And then my workflow is ready to be assigned in a production environment. So I can go back here to my assign screen. I click on workflows. And it'll tell me, hey, you can assign this workflow to a candidate. And then the process just behaves like any other activity. Put the candidate information in after assignment, and they'll get assigned that workflow. So from here, it's the same. The benefit of this, as I mentioned, as an administrator, when you go out to see those workflow results, I'm sorry, I clicked on the wrong button here. When you go out to see those workflow results, it'll tell you, here's the step that the candidate's in for this particular activity. So for different activities here, I can see all of the stages that a candidate is in. I can see an overview at the top here. I have 7 in progress. I have 5 completed. I can look at a summary. There's 1 candidate in this step, 5 candidates in this step. I can click on the number 5 and it'll show me those candidates and what status they're in. So a great way to save yourself some time. Not the easiest thing to do, but as you can see, with a little bit of work, you can set up complex workflows to make your process life that's repeatable pretty easy.